What do voting rights, marijuana pardons, Georgia on my mind, and Kanye West have in common? Stay tuned and I'll let you know. All right. Thank you for tuning in. This is Augustus Corbett, a.k.a. the Minister of Justice. And with me, I have the pleasure of having.
Chloe Corbett, aka the Duchess of Justice.
And together we are the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every Saturday, we provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you with the information you need to be a legal rebel and to defy this unjust legal system. Please, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe, like, share, and comment. I'm convinced that our show, Chloe, is the best legal analysis show for African Americans on YouTube. I'm convinced of that. I'm gonna share why I'm so convinced of that a little bit later in the show. But we got a lot to talk about. We're going to revisit the voting rights issue because why? Well, because a huge voting rights case was heard by the U.S. Supreme Court this past Tuesday, and some powerful things were said by Justice Jackson, Justice Kagan, that need to be highlighted here and discussed a little bit. And we're definitely going to talk about the fact that Joe Biden has pardoned all marijuana possession cases in all federal marijuana simple possession cases. We need to talk about that. That's pretty big. Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. I think it was Ray Charles who said that. I'm talking specifically about Raphael Warnock and most especially Herschel Walker and his son Christian Walker. We got a lot to get in there. That's kind of messy. Need to keep that family in prayer. And then, yay, Kanye West. You know, I really, Chloe, hate to talk about Kanye West, to be honest with you, because that's really what he wants. He wants us talking about him. He'll do anything to appease certain people so that he will be the talk of town. But we're going to talk about him because he did something I think that's important to the African American community. With all that said, Chloe, how are you feeling this afternoon?
I am feeling good. I do want to tell our listeners I am dealing with allergies. I'm on allergy medication, so my energy seems a little down. That's why. But I'm so happy to be here. We have you heard all of the topics that we're going to be talking about. Very interesting topic. So I am ready to get into it when you are, Dad.
Well, I have enough energy today for both of us. So I got you. All
Thank
right?
you. Thank you.
I got you. I got you. So don't even worry about it. I'm in the house. This is my space. I enjoy talking about this stuff right here. So I got you. Just chime in as you need to. Just having your pretty face on camera with me is all I need. All right?
Thank you.
All right. So let's get into, and by the way, you currently, are you right now on medication?
Yeah, I am.
Are you, so are you a
Right
little bit,
now.
right now, are you a little bit high right now from the medication?
Just a tiny bit.
Wow. Okay.
Anyone who deals with allergies, you know those antihistamines. They can have you feeling loopy and doopy, but I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get started with today's show. Um, let me just say that this show is so important. This show is so important. This show, this we should have 1 million followers.
Yes.
We should have 1 million subscribers right now. And that I'm believing for that. I am. I'm believing for 1 million subscribers because what we're seeing is just so important. It is so important to the African American community. What we try to do is we try to use our legal knowledge to be like the ears and eyes of the African American community in the courtroom. So we hear it in the courtroom. We hear it being spoken by, the power players in the legal circles, and we run back and tell our audience. Okay, we try to empower our audience, the African American community, and we are unashamedly dedicated. We've dedicated our show to empowering the African American community. And what we're talking about, I mean, what's more important than voting rights? What's more important than marijuana federal pardons by Joe Biden? What's more important than the senatorial race in Georgia? And so many more things are much more important than Kanye West and Candace Owens, but they still made it to our discussion today. All right, so where are we going to start? Let's talk about, first and foremost, Joe Biden pardoning all federal, um, you know, simple marijuana cases. That's pretty big, Chloe. I don't know if folks understand how big that is. It's not big in the sense that it really impacts a whole lot of people because from what I understand, it only really deals with like 6,500 to 7,000 people. Um, but there are some things that are really important about it, and that is, and I just want to point those out quickly. Currently, marijuana in the federal law is scheduled or classified with heroin, and even more serious than fentanyl, which is killing people around the country. So not only did Biden pardon people, but he also is trying to declassify marijuana so that it's no longer in the same schedule with heroin. I think ultimately, Chloe, what he's trying to do is decriminalize simple marijuana possession. What are your thoughts?
I think it needs to be decriminalized. I think it needs to be made legal. I don't see marijuana at all on the same level as heroin or opioids. And I think so many people, especially black people, unfortunately, have gotten caught up and have criminal records for simply possessing or smoking marijuana, which to me makes absolutely no sense. I think the federal government needs to step in and decriminalize marijuana on the federal level, a nationwide level, instead of allowing the states to do it. We live here in Texas, and the way that our legislature is set up and who's running it, I don't believe marijuana will be decriminalized statewide for many, many, many years. Even though there's so many district attorneys' offices who are not charging marijuana possession cases, but for states like Texas and other states similar to us, I think it's good that Biden is trying to do something to address it. And I think it's good that the federal government is taking a lead for this because hopefully the states will follow because most of the drug possession convictions come from the state level. I was reading some information, some reports that I want to say a little over 3 million people were convicted from 2011 until now on the statewide level for marijuana possession. So hopefully more states will follow what Biden is doing and have a larger impact.
Well, one of the reasons I think more states will follow, in fact, 37 states currently have decriminalized marijuana in some form or fashion. So So marijuana is already on its way out as, a serious drug offense. Um, Unless you're doing delivery, manufacturing, something like that. But just simple possession, in other words, you're a smoker of marijuana. Nah, that shouldn't be. To me, it's stupid. It's foolish. Um, it's no more serious, right, than drinking alcohol or beer. I mean, what I don't do either. Stopped that years ago, but I don't see where it's any different. Now, white conservatives say it's a gateway drug, right? They say you start smoking marijuana, you're going to start using heroin, you're going to start using crack, meth, etc. So that's why they tend to um, oppose it. But I think the the other states will follow suit, largely because the federal government spends a lot of money with states with in law enforcement efforts. So these states, their public safety units, the police departments, law enforcement agencies get federal dollars, and the federal government oftentimes will say, "Hey, you want this carrot? You got to play by our rules." So I think the other states will come along. Of course, the southern states where the white conservatives are, they're going to just oppose it just for GP, just for general principles. But I think it's a very positive development. I think it is. I hope it is decriminalized very quickly. I represented a guy many years ago, Chloe. Um, he was charged with possession less than 2 grams of marijuana possession, just simple possession. And Chloe, the amount of marijuana he had was so small. This is a true story. They had to magnify. They took a picture of it on the in the back seat, and they had to magnify the speck of marijuana they found 100 times in order to see it.
Mm.
And I worked hard to get that case dismissed, and they would not dismiss that case. They had to multiply. There's a little speck like what you see right here on my finger. You, can you see that? You can't see that, can you?
Mm-mm.
It fell off. I mean, that's my point. You see that?
Yeah,
It was that small.
that's a shame. Like that. Why? One, you're wasting tax dollars money trying to prosecute someone for a speck of marijuana. Um, Two, again, it's just a complete waste of resources to focus time on that when you have other people accused of violent crimes that can actually harm the community versus having a little tiny speck of marijuana. It just makes no sense on a
Well,
practical level or otherwise.
well, I saw during that case, I saw exactly why they do that. You know why? Money.
Yeah.
Money. Now, I remember I charged that guy around $5,000. Okay. Spec or not, it was a criminal charge that I had to work hard to defend him on. And, you know, I couldn't just because it was a spec. I couldn't say, okay, I'll do this for $200. I mean, I'm in business. But I worked hard on that case. But not only did he pay me $5,000, he also paid the state fines, probation fees, etc. There's money attached to it.
Yeah.
You see? That's why they don't want to let that go. That's a major revenue source. That's how they build these prisons and pay for these cop cars and fund law enforcement. All right? So that's a huge reason why they don't do it. All right? That they haven't decriminalized it. That would be again forfeiting a major source of income. Nonetheless, we are happy that Biden did that, and hopefully it will be decriminalized across the country. Simple marijuana possession should not be illegal for anybody, and especially when you got states, Chloe, where people are literally making millions of dollars, white people mostly, are making millions of dollars selling marijuana, and black people disproportionately are being prosecuted and sent to jail in other states for selling marijuana. Now, make that make sense.
Yeah,
It
it
doesn't.
totally doesn't.
All right. Biden is also in the news, Chloe, for another reason. And that is, wow, this kind of freaked a lot of people out. But Biden used the word Armageddon with respect to nuclear warfare with Russia. You know, Putin has sort of insinuated that he will use a nuclear bomb, if things keep going south for him in Ukraine. And Biden said, well, that could result in Armageddon. And if people are unfamiliar with the word Armageddon, it is the event in at the end of the world, according to the Bible, which I believe to be absolutely true. It is the event at the end of the world where there is a war between Christ and his followers and Satan and his followers. And obviously the Lord wins that battle. It results in a lot of death and basically it's the end of evil and it's the triumph, the complete total triumph of God's kingdom and goodness. Um, Now, I don't think that I don't think that Biden had all that in mind when he used the word Armageddon, but that is biblically what it means. I think he was just trying to say, if you pull out the nukes, you're very well going to start a chain of events that will destroy Russia and possibly a whole lot of other countries. Don't go down that road.
Yeah, and I mean Putin has he's threatened the world, the United States with nuclear options for helping the Ukraine. So I don't think it's far fetched just to keep it on Americans' minds that there is a leader out here in Russia. They're trying to become the new global world power. They have nuclear capabilities, and they've said that they'll use it if we continue to interfere with what they're doing. So I did read where the White House press secretary was trying to walk back some of his statements. Um, I have to be honest. I don't. Her performance, I think, could be better. I know that she's supposed to. She is basically the talking person for the White House, but I feel like she should lean in more to some of the things that Biden says. He obviously said it for a reason, but she tends to deflect what he says. And I think it'd just be better to explain this is there. Look, Putin came out and said this. We have helped in Ukraine. Um, Russia has declared war on Ukraine. So we're just trying to warn Americans, keep this on you all brain that this could devolve into that in the near future.
It's an interesting observation. The first African American person, period, I believe, and certainly the first African American female to be the White House press secretary. Um, that you, as an African American woman, would find some issue with the way she's doing her job. Um, Overall, I mean, that's a pretty specific criticism. Overall, how do you think she's doing?
That's my big criticism with her, and to be honest, Kamala Harris. I don't know if it's the political insiders that tell them to kind of bite their tongues more or appear less threatening or appear less like the angry black woman. But I feel like when they come out, they don't come out and speak directly. And I've had to learn to do that as an attorney, um, just to get straight to the point. But I feel like politically, whatever their strategists are telling them, it's like kind of simmer things down. Don't speak as directly. You don't want to be seen as the angry black woman. So I don't know. I just have criticism of that with a lot of black women who are in Hollywood. I mean, not Hollywood, but DC and politics today.
Well, okay. I mean, I think that they're in a position, especially Kamala Harris, and I can't think of her name right now. The press secretary. I think they're in a situation where they got to sort of follow Biden's lead, and it's my understanding that what he said about Armageddon was not a part of his talking points. He kind of went off script, and um, and keep in mind when this man speaks, the world listens. I mean, the world listens. It reverberates around the world. So I presume they're trying to say, okay, this is not consistent. And Biden is accustomed to making gaffes, right? So
Mhm.
I think they were trying to say this is not what we talked about. This is not these are not the talking points that we agreed upon. So um, you know, let's walk this back a little bit. I don't know. But I completely understand what you're saying, that the sisters need to be more like sisters and stop just, you know,
Exactly.
yeah, stop hamstringing. I get it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. All right. So let's move on. Uh, let's revisit this voting rights case that, oh man, that just came down. Um, it was just heard in the U.S. Supreme Court this past Tuesday. Chloe, I get frustrated. Let me just confide in you a little bit. I get frustrated. I get frustrated because so many things are going on in our country, especially where the law is concerned, that impacts impact African Americans, but they seem to be so um, indifferent. It's like they don't know what's really happening that is impacting their lives in a huge way. And this case is just one example of that. And we're getting ready to play some excerpts from the oral argument that is so powerful, so powerful. Justices Alina Kagan and newly minted Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Oh boy, did they show up in a big time way in these oral arguments, especially Justice Jackson. Now you're talking about a sister not biting her tongue. She did not. She let it rip. She let it rip and never got unprofessional or anything like that. But she schooled SCOTUS and the nation. And
That's
we're
what I
going,
wanted to see.
oh yes, she did. She did because they are trying to completely, totally, absolutely gut the Voting Rights Act. And if you do that, black folks, black people, black Americans, African Americans, hear me. Cases are being heard in these courts, in federal district courts and the U.S. Supreme Court, that have to do with our ability to cast our votes. And white conservatives are doing everything they can to take our vote away from us. You got to get woke. You got to get toned in. And this is the place to do it, because we try to take these complicated legal doctrines and cases and simplify them so that you can understand. That's what we say. We do legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, pop culture. We throw a little bit of pop culture in there and some interesting personalities like Kanye. But we bring you a legal analysis of politics that affect your life and the politicians and politics who affect your life, to empower you to defy this unjust legal system. That's what we do. That's what we do every Saturday. You need to tune in so that you can understand what's going on. This show is dangerous to your ignorance. I'm going to say it again. This show right here, warning, this would be, we should have a big warning sign. Warning, 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 red alert, red alert, red alert, red alert. This show is dangerous to ignorance because we're going to bring you knowledge here. Now, that's me ranting a little bit, Chloe. Merrill v. Milligan. Again, a case about voting rights. It came out of Alabama. The Alabama legislature, which is dominated by white conservatives, they created a voting district map that has 6 majority districts, 1 black majority district. We talked about it last week. We're bringing it up again today because since we talked about it last Saturday, the Supreme Court heard oral argument on this case Tuesday just passed. And so there's 1 black majority district out of 7, although black people make up at least 27% of the Alabama population. So the Alabama NAACP and other plaintiffs believe there should be at least 2 majority black districts in Alabama. But the white Alabama legislature refused to do so, and they sued them. And so the Supreme Court heard the case this past Tuesday. I want you to hear some of the things that Justice Jackson and Justice Kagan had to say. Here we go.
So you think that there are circumstances, I mean, this is important to me because some of your arguments sweep extremely widely, maybe most of them, that there are circumstances in which a population that is 27% of the state's.
By the way, this is Justice Kagan, and the white gentleman that you see on the screen is the Alabama Solicitor General. So you're going to hear him respond to some of what Justice Kagan is saying and Justice Jackson.
Population could essentially be foreclosed from electing a candidate of their choice. Anywhere.
Your Honor, there's always going to be that intensely local appraisal to see what was going on there. Obviously, if we had these guidelines and we passed a map that took us from 1 down to 0, where we retained the cores of districts 1 through 6, but not district 7, that would be an easy case. That would be LULAC all over again. It'd be an easy case to bring. And also, I don't think.
So it all depends on, it all depends.
Well, it all depends on what Section 2 is trying to get at. And I don't think.
Okay, well, I think what Section is trying to get at is it's trying to ensure equal political opportunities. That's what. So let me just use that as a segue to my.
Okay, got to stop there and explain to you what just happened. So Justice Kagan said, well, look, you are basically here arguing that it's okay under our Constitution for a state that is 27% African American to draw up a congressional map that basically precludes those 27%, from choosing politicians of their choice. Is that what you're here telling us? And he answers, well, it depends on what Section 2 is getting at. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits racial discrimination when drawing up voting maps. So he flippantly said, it depends on what Section 2 is trying to get at. We know what Section 2 is trying to get at. It clearly says what it's trying to get at. What do you mean? Well, it depends on what Section 2 is trying to get at. And Justice Kagan begins to, go at him Well, I'll tell you what Section 2 is trying to get at, since you're being flippant. So that was the exchange that just happened. Let's go back.
Last question, which is that, this is an important statute. It's one of the great achievements of American democracy to achieve equal political opportunities regardless of race, to ensure that African Americans could have as much political power as white Americans could. That's a pretty big deal, and it was strengthened, this statute, in 1982 when this court interpreted it too narrowly for Congress's taste. And Congress said, no, we didn't mean that at all, and made this into a results test. Now, in recent years, this statute has fared not well in this court. Shelby County looks at Section 5, and it says, no, Section 5, we don't need that anymore. And one of the things it says is we have Section 2. And then Brnovich comes along, and that's a Section 2 case.
All right, what does she mean by Section 5? Well, the Shelby County versus Eric Holder versus Holder, we've talked about it multiple times right here at Defiant Lawyers. We have explained it again and again and again so that you understand it and understand what is going on all around us as we obsess with football and Kanye and the latest rapper, mixtapes, Beyonce, as we obsess with that foolishness, these important, critical, urgent things are happening in courts all around us that affect us as African Americans. So she says, this court has been hostile to the Voting Rights Act. In the Shelby County case, you got rid of Section 5. That required states like Alabama to get pre-clearance before they made any changes to their voting laws. So after they got rid of Section 5, then the Brnovich case, which the court heard, I think, in 2021, they gutted that basically. Okay? Or gutted a lot of it, Section 2. And so now they are trying to finish Section 2 off with this case. So if they do that, and they will do that because there's 6 of them, and isn't it ironic, Chloe, that Justice Kagan, a white woman, has to be up there arguing for voting rights when Clarence Thomas, a black man, sits there silently and will vote to gut Section 2? Isn't that something?
Yeah, because he doesn't care. He doesn't care at all. And he's made it sort of his mission on the court to be quiet, to be silent, to vote against civil rights issues, to vote against the Voting Rights Act, like he did in the Shelby County case that we talked about before, to vote against issues that are so important to the Black community. And it is so good to have a counterbalance of Justice Jackson on the court who is going to speak out eloquently on what impacts the Black community, use her legal knowledge to speak up and speak out. And that was my big fear. We talked about this last week. I wasn't sure how she was going to act in her first oral argument as a justice. I honestly thought that she would be like Justice Clarence Thomas, sit there, be quiet, let the other justices, the white justices, ask questions and
kind of
press
dominate
the
the
Solicitor
discourse.
General. Yes, I didn't think that she was going to question as she did. So I was so excited when I finally heard, okay, this is the tone that she's going to take, finally. And that's why we needed a Black woman on the Supreme Court.
In the spirit of Thurgood Marshall, to, like you said, we needed her on the court to counterbalance Clarence Thomas. Okay, all right. So I'm so anxious to get to her. So let's go back to oral argument. She will start speaking after Justice Kagan, but Justice Kagan said some powerful things. So let's go back.
And the court says, you know what, Section 2, they're really dilution claims. This is a denial claim, and so we can construe that very narrowly. But, of course, there's just all these cases that are dilution claims. That's really what Section 2 is about. And now here we are, Section 2 is a dilution claim, the classic Section 2 dilution claim. And you're asking us, essentially, to cut back substantially on our 40 years of precedent and to make this, too, extremely difficult to prevail on. So what's left? You're looking at a state where there are 27% of the population is African American, but only one of 7 districts, where there is incredible racially polarized voting, where there is a long history of racial discrimination in the state. Put all that together, and it seems clear that under our existing precedents, the inquiry is complete in just the way that the court below found. And, it seems to me that you're coming here, and it's totally your right to do it, but really saying change the way we look at Section 2 and its application.
I don't think we can assume that just because...
So she says, you're here asking us to interpret this statute in such a narrow way, and she asked that chilling question. What's left? You use Shelby County to get rid of Section 5. You use Bravanovich to knock one of the legs from under Section 2, and now you're back here to knock the other leg out from Section 2. What's left? So there'll be no voting rights. So black folks will not have the legal right to vote, even if they make up a sizable percentage of a state's population. Because the only thing that prevents states from going back to Jim Crow, where black folks had to count jelly beans in a jar, or they had to recite the Declaration of Independence or any of that before they could vote or even register to vote. The only thing that prevents us from going back to that is the Voting Rights Act. And they are willing it away. It's like, it's on, Chloe, the Voting Rights Act is on life support, and its heart its heart is beating 10%. And they're back in court right now asking those 6 conservative justices to get rid of that last 10% of its heart. Like Justice Kagan said, this is a really big deal. And that's a white woman. This doesn't affect her at all. I mean, it stirs me up.
Yeah, me too. And a lot of people will ask, okay, how does this affect me? Or I've seen questions online about, what is the harm in making someone, show their driver's license? How is that affecting the black community? I've seen those comments. But in this particular case, what Alabama is trying to do essentially, and I'm going to bring it back to the analogy that I did last week, taxation without representation. So making laws that disenfranchise black people, that disproportionately affect the black population in Alabama, which is 1/3, but not having proper representation in Congress for a person that represents that population's interests. That's what this is about, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make all of these decisions that are going to disproportionately affect black people, and not have those black people, their representation in Congress, to counterbalance that, counteract that. That is the big issue. That's the huge issue. That's why this entire country was founded. Yet they're doing the same thing on black people in this country. The hypocrisy is just astounding.
All right. So what is the harm in making somebody show an ID to vote? Okay, here it is. There are so many African Americans who don't have a driver's license or state-issued ID. I remember we were representing a young man, I think he was like 18, 19 years old. You remember him, Leonard.
Yeah.
Leonard did not have a state-issued ID or driver's license. We didn't have to do it as his attorneys, but we were not only trying to get his case dismissed in court, which we did, but we also worked with him outside the courtroom by helping him get an ID, helping him get a job, helping him get back in school. We tried to help him get in the military, right? So we did everything we could to help this young man. And in order to get his driver's license, we had to take him to the DMV about 3 times because he had to get this ID to show that ID. He had to get this to show that, all right? And he didn't have all that stuff. So we had to run him back and forth, and the DMV is like 20 miles from where he lived, and he didn't have a car and no bus to get there. All right, take Leonard's situation and multiply it 10,000 times. See, we sit back, those of us who are, in a better position, and we, look down our nose on people. I remember very well in my 20s when my driver's license and stuff was all jacked up. Okay, I remember that very well. And I was a college student, a college graduate. So somebody like Leonard, 18, 19-year-old kid, and then on top of that, Chloe, here in the state of Texas, for example, college students can't use their college ID. But you can use a hunting license.
Mm.
So who's more apt to have a hunting license? White guys. Who's more apt to have college IDs who will to vote? A lot of black college students. So they know what to do to get at the people they are trying to get at. And if you talk about what voting has to do with anything, well, this thing that Biden is doing, pardoning marijuana cases, he's able to do that because black folks got out there and voted him in office. The $20,000 student loan forgiveness, he's able to do that because black folk got out there and voted him in the office. Black female vice president, because Biden was able to, because black folks voted him in office. Voting impacts our life unlike I'm able to explain in the short amount of time that we have. So that is foolishness when people be talking that crazy stuff. Total foolishness. If voting wasn't important, why in the world did Dr. King, Medgar Evers, Cheney, Swerner, and Goodman, why did they give their lives trying to register people to vote if it wasn't important? It's crazy.
It's foolishness.
Justice
and
Jackson.
Ignorance.
It sure is. Absolute ignorance. All right, here's Justice Jackson.
Race is taken into account, that necessarily creates an equal protection problem, because I understood that we looked at the history and traditions of the Constitution, at what the framers and the founders thought about. And when I drilled down to that level of analysis, it became clear to me that the framers themselves adopted the Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment in a race-conscious way, that they were, in fact, trying to ensure that people who had been discriminated against, the freedmen, during the Reconstruction period, were actually brought equal to everyone else in the society. So I looked at the report that was submitted by the Joint Committee on Reconstruction, which drafted the 14th Amendment. And that report says that the entire point of the amendment was to secure rights of the freed former slaves. The legislator who introduced that amendment said that, quote, unless the Constitution should restrain them, those states will all, I fear, keep up this discrimination and crush to death the hated freedmen. That's not a race-neutral or race-blind idea in terms of the remedy. And even more than that, I don't think that the historical record establishes that the founders believed that race neutrality or race blindness was required, right? They drafted the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which specifically stated that citizens would have the same civil rights as enjoyed by white citizens. That's the point of that act, to make sure that the other citizens, the black citizens, would have the same as the white citizens. So they recognized that there was unequal treatment, that people based on their race were being treated unequally. And importantly, when there was a concern that the Civil Rights Act wouldn't have a constitutional foundation, that's when the 14th Amendment came into play. It was drafted to give a foundational, a constitutional foundation for a piece of legislation that was designed to make people who had less opportunity and less rights equal to white citizens. So with that as the framing in the background, I'm trying to understand your position that Section 2, which by its plain text is doing that same thing, is saying you need to identify people in this community who have less opportunity and less ability to participate and ensure that that's remedied, right? It's a race-conscious effort, as you have indicated. I'm trying to understand why that violates the 14th Amendment, given the history and background of the 14th Amendment.
The 14th Amendment is a prohibition on discriminatory state action. It is not an obligation to engage in affirmative discrimination in favor of some groups vis-a-vis others.
No, but as the record shows that the reason why the 14th Amendment was enacted was to give a constitutional foundation for that kind of effort, for the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which was doing what the Section 2 is doing here.
Right.
Which said by its terms that other citizens have to be made equal to white citizens, and people were concerned that that didn't have a constitutional basis, so they enacted the 14th Amendment.
All right. I'm going to try to break that down, okay? Going to try to break that down in as simpler terms as possible because it is very, very important. And she did an excellent job walking him through the nonsense that he's standing up there saying and that they have been able to get through the court for many, many, many years. And here it is. So first she says, you conservatives on the court, and you Federalist Society people, you white conservatives, you GOP folks, you love to talk about how the Constitution has to be interpreted by going back to the original documents and trying to ascertain what the framers meant, what the writers of a statute meant when they wrote it. Is that clear, Chloe?
Mm-hmm.
So she says, I did that. I went back, I did the research, and I found the comments that were made when they were debating the statute. And those comments said that this statute, or the 14th Amendment in particular, is not to be used in a race-neutral way. Now, why is that important? Because white conservatives say that if you do something to benefit African Americans under the 14th Amendment, you violate the 14th Amendment, because the 14th Amendment is to be neutral, race neutral. And she's saying that is ridiculous because the 14th Amendment was added to the Constitution to address racism. And how can you address racism if you don't take race into account when you are coming up with remedies? So she's saying, and I showed you that based on the record, the historical record, the things that were said. I'm showing you their intent when they added the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, as well as the Voting Rights Act. Because again, white conservatives say that the 14th Amendment is to be race neutral. That's the way they have been able to interpret it and get that case law in place. And she's saying all of that is wrong and is inconsistent with, one, common sense, but it's also inconsistent with the historical record. So when he stands there and says to the court with a straight face that you all cannot take race into account when addressing voting rights cases, she's saying that is not consistent with the reason the 14th Amendment and the voting rights were added in the first place. Because they argue if you take race into account, now you're doing reverse discrimination. So, in essence, they use racism to get an advantage. And then they say if you do something to remedy that advantage, now you're discriminating against them. So I look at it this way. If you got a knife in somebody's back 5 inches and you insist that they take it out and you use, race as the reason why it should come out, they say no. In essence, that's reverse discrimination. So we ought to be able to keep this knife in your back for another, keep this knife in your back these 5 inches. It's crazy, and she did a tremendous job showing how inconsistent with the historical record it is and how nonsensical it is. I hope I explained that as well as I could. Help me out.
Well, what was so smart about it too is that a lot of the conservative justices, like late Justice Antonin Scalia, they see themselves as originalists. So they say you should look to see um, what the intention of the law was at the time that it was written,
Right.
and what the frame workers, what they meant and what they intended. So what she did is she used that same legal philosophy to look back to see, as you pointed out, looking at the comments when the 14th Amendment was written, to see what it actually said, what was intended. And like you just pointed out, that it was not intended to be race neutral.
How could it be intended to be race neutral when it was addressing racism?
Yeah. It makes no sense. So the conservatives, like this Solicitor General LaCour, they completely flip-flop. When it benefits them, they want to be originalists. Let's look to see what the framers intended. When it benefits black people or it counteracts racism, no, they meant it to be race neutral. We don't need to look at what the comment says. So again, it's just the hypocrisy that is so.
I like the way you put that.
Yeah.
They flip-flop.
They flip-flop.
They want to be originalist. Look to the original intent when it benefits them. But when Justice Jackson says, well, let's go. No, let's do that. Let's look at the original intent of the 14th Amendment, and it turns your position on its head.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a complete rewriting of history because, as you said, we know what the 14th Amendment was intended to do. which was to counterbalance the racism. Yet the Solicitor General says, well, it can't prop up one race above the other. What? I mean, it's a complete rewriting of history. It's a fantasy. It makes no sense. It's illogical reasoning just to get to the point of what they're wanting, which is to disenfranchise black voters. And it's so intentional because I mean they have studied the 14th Amendment in law school, I presume. They know what the original intention of the 14th Amendment is, yet they're less to disenfranchise black voters gets them saying these nonsensical arguments.
That's right. And it's so powerful that a black female makes this, it is challenging him. And in return, see, because as she challenges him, she's really talking to her colleagues.
Yeah.
She's talking to them through him. She's letting them know that stuff is not going to fly with me. Okay, I want you all to understand where I'm coming from with this. I come in the vein of Thurgood Marshall. That's not going to work. And this has all to do with critical race theory as well, right? That's a whole nother conversation. But I am elated. I'm elated that she's on the court. And like you said, I am even more so elated that she didn't just sit there.
Yeah.
She made herself very, very, very clear. So Black Americans, those of you who hear me and those of you who will hear me on this, there is a sister and on the highest court of the land who's fighting for us. Yep. And I think she deserves.
And to that point, I just want to say really quickly too, I love that she spoke so much. She spoke about 3.5 minutes uninterrupted because it shows her colleagues and the world about her legal skills, her legal reasoning, her understanding of the law and the Constitution, and that she was not an affirmative action appointee. She knows the law. So her speaking clearly, arguing her points, explaining the history of the 14th Amendment, it shows, just like you said, that the other justices and anyone else who does oral arguments in front of her, you're going to have to come correct because I know the law. I've studied this. So let me get this all out on the record, on the transcript, my understanding. So right. That when in the future, other people who come and argue in front of us, you'll know what I know what I'm talking about. So I loved it for that reason.
Yes. And there ain't a thing they can do about her. She's on the court for life.
For life.
She have to die before there's nothing they can do to get rid of her. All right, very good. So, man, I've been so excited about sharing that with our audience. Justice Jackson is in the house. Yeah. All right, so let's move on now to a story here that's trending. Yeah, Herschel Walker. This is buffoonery. I mean, it's just pure buffoonery. It's embarrassing, for me as an African American man, for this guy to be this way. But anyway, again, talking about Herschel Walker, and he's running for the senatorial seat there against Raphael Warnock. To his left is his son, Christian Walker. And so basically, I think the Daily Beast came out with the report recently that Herschel Walker paid for one of his baby mamas to have an abortion. And they had some receipts, a literal receipt, as well as a get well card. And all this is alleged. We don't know if it's factual yet, but that's the allegation. And I remember a time not so long ago, before Donald Trump came in office, just the accusation itself would have ruined his run for the Senate seat. But nowadays, because a man like Trump was able to become the president, he has severely lowered the standards of who can serve in public office. So you can have baby mamas, you can have allegations of all kinds of stuff. You can admit on TV that you grabbed a woman by her anatomy. You can do all that kind of stuff and still be elected nowadays because Trump literally lowered the standard. And this also is crazy for another reason. Herschel Walker allegedly paid for an abortion, but he is on the record as opposing abortion under all circumstances. So what a crazy story this is. And then his son comes out and makes a couple of Twitter videos that I've never seen anything like this. I mean, it's just, again, buffoonery. You want to comment now? Or do you want us to watch what Christian has to say first?
Just context for Christian. Christian Walker is a very popular conservative pundit on TikTok and stuff as well. So he's the son of Herschel Walker. He's very conservative. He's popular in the conservative circles. So him coming out and saying this against his dad is very striking as well. And that's what caused it to get even more attention than what it did.
Yeah, and speaking of his conservatism, Christian, I understand that he is he denies that Trump lost the election. I mean, he denies that Biden won. So he believes the big lie. I understand he opposes Black Lives Matter, and some other things. I mean, he's really, 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 really far right. But this got on his last nerve, and he came out and made a couple statements. Let's hear from Christian right now.
I stayed silent as the atrocities committed against my mom were downplayed. I stayed silent when it came out that my father, Herschel Walker, had all these random kids across the country, none of whom he raised. And you know my favorite issue to talk about is father absence. Surprise, because it affected me. That's why I talk about it all the time, because it affected me. Family values, people. He has 4 kids, 4 different women, wasn't in the house raising one of them. He was out having sex with other women. Do you care about family values? I was silent, lie after lie after lie. The abortion card drops yesterday. It's literally his handwriting in the card. They say they have receipts, whatever. He gets on Twitter. He lies about it. Okay, I'm done. Done. Everything has been a lie. And so for the right to say I'm being suspicious for saying, hey, I'm done with the lies, when you all have been calling me saying, is this true about your dad? Gosh, we're not going to win Georgia, this candidate, all, that's been you. You have no idea what I've been through in my life. You have no idea what me and my mom have survived. We could have ended this on day 1. We haven't. I haven't told any stories. I'm just saying, don't lie. Don't lie on my mom. Don't lie on me. Don't lie on the lives you've destroyed and act like you're some moral family man. Y'all should care about that, conservatives. And then for people on the left to act as though I'm responsible for all of the things that he has done. I've talked about father absence. I've talked all these issues because they've been close to me. Because they matter to me, because I went through it. That's why I've talked about it. So when you say, well, talk about your dad, but I'm saying this behavior is atrocious. Don't come for me. You don't have to like my politics. You don't have to like me. You don't have to. I'm just saying I'm done with the lies. We were told at the beginning of this, he was going to get ahead of his past, hold himself accountable, all of these different things, and that would have been fine. Go ahead. He didn't do any of that. Everything's been a lie. Everything's been downplayed. Everything's been cutting corners. The whole thing. And whose expense is that at? Me, my mom, as we're chased down by the media, we're terrorized, all these different things. People are questioning my authenticity. I'm done. Don't lie. Don't put this on me. This is a candidate issue, not a me issue. I wouldn't have spoken out if there weren't all these lies every day.
Wow. Never seen anything like that. for somebody who could win a Senate seat in this country. It shows you how low things have sunken here. It's it's speechless. It leaves you speechless. And let me just say, I actually have compassion for this young man. He's dealt with a lot with his father. Obviously, that's what he's trying to say. My father's history has affected me, and so despite him, being hostile to Black Lives Matter and being a huge Trump supporter, I still have compassion for this young man.
Yeah. I mean, he was saying some things, and I think it just goes to show, do you want that quality of person representing people from the state of Georgia in Congress? Um, that's the choice that the people in Georgia have between Reverend Raphael Warnock and the type of person that Herschel Walker seems to be, according to these reports, according to his son. And I mean, it's just striking because Republicans, they make themselves out to be the party of family values and putting conservatism back on the table, how America used to be. Um, Yet, and in addition to the reports that came out about allegedly Herschel Walker paying for the abortion, apparently with the same woman, he had a child who's 10 years old now, and he's never seen the child, barely communicated with the child,
Mm.
pays child support, but doesn't call the child,
Wow.
any of that. Um,
And it also came out that he asked this woman to have a second abortion.
yeah, that was reported as well in the
Well,
interview that she gave.
well, Christian has some more to say. Hold on.
And just two more things I have to address, and then I'm done with this buffoonery nutjob land. This is atrocious. People on the right are pulling up that I did a campaign event with my dad last year. They're saying, well, you supported them all last year and all this year. You look suspicious. No. You all have been calling me saying, why aren't you on the campaign trail with your dad? Why aren't you helping him out? This looks weird. You should go help him. And I've said to you calmly, I'm not getting involved. You don't know my family life. I did one event last year when we were told he was going to get ahead of his past and hold himself accountable. None of that happened. Everything's been a lie. So for me to tell you I'm not getting involved, and then you also be flooding my DMs and calling me saying, I didn't know all this about your dad, we're going to lose the Senate race. And then when I simply say, I'm done with the lies, you go, well, Christian looks suspicious. Excuse me? I haven't told one story about what I experienced with him. I'm just simply saying, don't lie. And then for certain political pundits to be pulling up old pictures I posted of my dad, thinking they can police and determine what my relationship with my dad was. If you want to pull stuff up, I'll pull stuff up. Don't try me. Don't test my authenticity. All of this has been a lie, and you've known it. You've known. So don't you dare. And then to the left, who says, well, he did all this to your mom and you were still with them, and that's weird. You know nothing about my life. My parents went through a dirty divorce. I went through a lot as a child, and you don't know anything. You don't know the ebbs and flows of our relationship. Nobody knows anything. So for everyone making these wild theories and whatever, that's crazy. This is about a bunch of lies. Again, I could, if I had an issue with whatever, I could have ended this day. That's not my intention. My intention is don't lie about your life at the expense of me, my mom, and all of the people that you've affected throughout your life. You don't get to pretend you're some moral family guy. You don't get to pretend all these things. Talk policy, talk normal. Do not lie.
Wow. Wow. So, to the conservatives, his message is very clear. I didn't want any parts of this, but you pressured me, and I came out, and now all this stuff is coming out, and he didn't live up to his part of the bargain where he was going to acknowledge stuff and deal with his past forthrightly, and he's, instead of doing that, according to his son, Herschel's lying about things. So, now, you brought up the fact, Chloe, that conservatives have been the party who've talked about everybody else's morality. They've been the party of family values. They've been the party of, Christian faith and all of this, right? That's what they've said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to play another video of one of them saying the quiet part out loud. She makes it very known what this is about and what this has always been about. Let's watch this video.
So, does this change anything? I mean, do you want my opinion? You're listening. Not a damn thing. How many times have I said 4 very important words? These 4 words. Winning is a virtue. What I'm about to say is in no means a contradiction or a compromise of a principle. And please keep in mind that I am concerned about one thing and one thing only at this point. So I don't care if Herschel Walker paid to abort endangered baby eagles. I want control of the Senate. If the Daily Beast story is true, you're telling me Walker used his money to reportedly pay some skank for an abortion, and Warnock wants to use all of our monies to pay a whole bunch of skanks for abortions. And yes, when they're used predominantly over 99% of birth control and it's my taxpayer dollars, you have invited me up in your business and I will use whatever descript I would like to. Thank you. I don't know if he did it or not. I don't even care.
There it is. There it is. This is one of their firebrand conservatives, Dana Loesch, and she makes it very clear. She used the example of baby eaglets, but just be totally upfront, Dana, and just say, I don't care if you pay for abortions to abort babies. I just want the Senate. Don't use baby eaglets. That come on. Just be upfront about it. You don't care that he paid for money, that he gave money to abort babies, as long as he helps you win the Senate. This has never been about abortions with the GOP, Chloe. I've said it all along. I'm gonna go on the record. I'm pro-life, and I mean it. I'm truly pro-life. I'm your father. I raised you. You know, I mean it when I say I'm pro-life. But they're not, and they never have been. They use the pro-life issue politically. They started using the pro-life issue before the 60s. Most white evangelicals were completely fine with abortion. It was right after Roe v. Wade, it was right after Brown versus Board of Education that white conservatives latched onto the abortion issue so that they could galvanize their voters around something other than segregation and racism. They knew that was just too loaded in light of the Brown case, and things were just changing. Things were changing in this country. People were seeing things different about race, and things were changing internationally, abroad. So what issue could they galvanize around? Abortion. And that's when they started becoming all this pro-life. But it was always a ploy. And this woman just admits it. They don't care about the life of the unborn. What did she say? I just want control of the Senate. She said it. So there it is.
Yeah, they don't care when black men and black people are disproportionately shot by the police. They don't care when the black woman maternal mortality rate is extremely high. They don't care about education and voting when it comes to lives after the life is born. So, I mean, just hearing her say that, I mean, wow, it's so daunting to just hear it straight out loud like that. I mean, even after 4 years of Trump, she said what he hadn't even said publicly.
She just
But
admitted
he's
it.
emboldened them.
He emboldened them, and she's like that. I mean, she was and still may be spokesperson for the NRA. So she's she's known to really speak her mind. I mean, so that was not unusual for her. But to hear a white conservative just say basically, I don't care whether he paid to abort a baby or not, as long as he can help us win the Senate. That's what it's always been about for them: power, 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 power. And keep in mind, Herschel Walker was handpicked by Trump. Okay? So these folks, the GOP bends over backwards to please and appease Trump. So they're going to stick with Herschel no matter what he did. Wasn't it Donald Trump who said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they won't do anything about it? Talking about the GOP. So quite naturally, if Herschel Walker paid money, and this, he said abortion is murder. So he paid money to have a baby murdered. And that woman just told us, I don't care. That means nothing if he can help us win the Senate.
Mm.
Kanye West, as we come to a close. That's what that's what the preachers say when about to end the sermon. Coming down. As I come to a close. Yay! Look at what Ye said. White Lives Matter. Him and Candace Owens. White Lives Matter. I'll just quickly say, of course, white lives matter. That is not even a debate. As a matter of fact, white lives matter more than any other life in this country and on this planet. So what a stupid T-shirt or sweatshirt or whatever this is. Well, it's just stupid. When the lives of white people are very, very valued, you don't have to assert that. You don't have to say that. You do have to say and assert that where black lives are concerned. And so for him to take the attention away from the Black Lives Matter slogan to give it to this nonsensical slogan, not that white lives don't matter, but they matter more than all other lives. And so the Black Lives Matter movement, and by the way, Kanye calls that a fraud. But he'll wear this shirt. He calls Black Lives Matter a fraud, but him and Candace Owens, but they'll put on this shirt. I mean, these folks, I don't even understand, Chloe. This is your generation. It's not my generation. I don't understand why he gets so much love in the black community. I don't care how well he can put a beat together. I don't care how well he can rap. I don't care about any of that. And by the way, his fashion stuff to me looks foolish. I saw him in a pair of boots the other day, just great big boots. I mean that. So I don't understand why he gets so much love despite all this anti-black rhetoric that comes out of his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Kanye for I thought he was a musical genius, and like you were saying, the beats that he puts together, the music that he makes. But I just see this as he's an attention seeker, and we know that he has diagnosed mental health problems, and he's trying to keep himself in the media and continue to get media notoriety. And just like the slave is a choice comments he's made before, in a couple months he's probably going to come out and apologize. Go into hiding for a few months. This is just a pattern that he's done over and over again.
But when is the black community? When are young black folks like yourself and others? When are y'all gonna cancel this guy?
He's already canceled for a lot of black people. I think a lot of his big fans now are young white kids.
Okay.
I think it's flipped. I think a lot of people in the black community are canceling him and had already canceled him with the previous comments that he made. I think a lot of his fans now are young, millennial, Gen Z, white kids. If you look at some of the forums that are about him, that seems to be the big makeup of his supporters. So I mean, it's just clownery. It's media attention. It's sad. It's I don't know. Prayers for Kanye, y'all. He needs help. And I pray for his 4 kids too. So,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. As always, Chloe, thank you for fighting through the allergies and everything. You didn't sniffle not one time. So, your allergy medicine must be working pretty good.
Yeah, it is. I'm just tired now. But I'm glad I didn't sniffle.
Well, it would have been okay. So that's going to be the end of our show today. We walked you through a very important voting rights case. We talked about the fact that Biden is trying to decriminalize marijuana as pardon. Almost 7,000 folks who are disproportionately black. We talked about Herschel Walker and all the circus stuff going on with him and his family. But you know, with Herschel, you can't dismiss it because whoever wins that Georgia seat will probably give control of the Senate to whatever party they represent. And then you have this guy right here. Let me take him off the screen. I just don't want to give him anymore. But anyway, that brings us to the end of our show today. Chloe, I've enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you so much for pushing through and being on the show with me. If you don't have anything else to say, I'm going to end it.
No, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you. We will see you next Saturday with these trending topics that affect the black community. Stay tuned.
Bye.